Hi, well, I'm Ray Briscoe. I'm a Holden resident and also happen to be the vice president of the school board. So I grew up in Holden, out near Pittsville, and I graduated from Holden in 1968. Went to the University of Missouri, actually had a teaching certificate, but tried that for 1 year and then did a few other things. Was always enamored by the Air Force, so made the decision to go to the Air Force. Wanted to be a pilot, but at the time, because of Arab oil embargoes, I ended up being a navigator, and one of the specialized fields of navigation is electronic warfare. I was very fortunate all along my career to have challenging jobs that used common sense and a little bit of technical background. And long story short, I did this for 30 years before I retired. I was privileged to be part of the missile warning for the first Iraq War, Desert Shield and Desert Storm. And of course there we had actual missiles flying at U.S. forces. And so I learned how to make missile warning relevant to those guys. And then I was also privileged to be on the U.S. Central Command staff, General Frank's staff, when we did it all over again after Operation Enduring Freedom. So a lot of good experience there as a veteran. I look back on it. In fact, after I left the Air Force, I worked for an organization that continued to apply advanced physics and technology to help the warfighter. I had a father-in-law who was a waist gunner in World War II and then also in Korea. So he had an Air Force background. He took delivery on the first KC-135 tanking airplanes and was what we call a boom operator, a boomer. Mm-hmm. So he guided the boom that pumped the gas to the receiving airplanes. So he had a little bit of influence because he had an Air Force background and a flying background. But I also, even in 4-H, I took aviation and had an aviation track. Flew with Sam Thomason, one of our other board members. I flew with his dad out here on the farm, a little Piper Cub. I went to Navigator Electronic Warfare training in California. So that was about a year, and I was a brand new parent at that time, and so watched my kids grow up. And I was all excited after that year of training that I was going to go to Florida and have a nice job in Florida. And needs of the Air Force changed, and I had to then equip myself for winter living in Great Falls, Montana. I wanted to fly special airlift airplanes that did sneaky things with big cargo airplanes. And Personnel Systems said, well, no, you flew a plane, an EB-57, never dropped a bomb in my life, but they said I would be best suited to be a bomber pilot. So I flew B-52s. But at least I did go to Fort Worth, Texas. So I did that for a while, and then, as I said, I transitioned to the space business, and I was in Colorado Springs, worked in Cheyenne Mountain. Look up War Games if you ever want to watch a movie about Cheyenne Mountain, and did the missile warning mission. And of course that was not like what happened in War Games, but it was a great job, and I got to, having worked with a crew on my B-52, I also worked with a crew of space people, and how we kept track of all our missile warning sensors and made sense of what those sensors were telling us, whether the United States was under attack or if it was just a sensor anomaly. As you continue to make rank and move up, you get to do lots of paperwork. So then they moved me to staff, and I had to do paperwork and build budgets at the Pentagon. I did a little bit of time at Langley Air Force Base in Virginia. Of course, all these places have great history, and so you were, in addition to having the military history, you were in places where the Wild West was in Colorado, or the colonials were in Williamsburg and around Langley Air Force Base. So all great assignments. Got to deploy into Qatar as my main place, but I was all over the theater, but always doing staff stuff. So But I had lots of people that were running around in up armored Humvees in the field, but my job was to work the phones and do paper. I think the main thing is, and being in the space business after I was in this, I did work a lot with Navy people and Army people and everything, but it's different when you're doing operations plans and actually conducting warfare. The cultures of those people that you meet and work with, you have to be very empathetic of what their missions and goals are and how you can best support them. I guess having worked with all kinds of different people, I learned that having that good Missouri Holden area, grow up on the farm, common sense, figuring out that, well, we got to get it done, let's figure out how to do it. That's not a common trait in a lot of people. Every service has its own professional organization. So there's the Air Force Association, and there are local chapters and groups, and you can get involved with that. Sometimes you're around a military base, and so you bump into the military folks and have coffee with them and all that. Sometimes you're not. You know, after my military career, I worked for the Applied Physics Lab, and it was a great culture merge of a bunch of very smart mathematicians or physicists or well, just about every specialty going, and military guys who could talk the language, understand the problems, and tell the engineer, well, that's really nice, but it isn't going to work.
Right.
So it was really good, and of course, so I had all that military camaraderie going there. As much as we don't like adherence to the rules, I don't know if you know, the military has a unique set of rules called the Uniform Code of Military Justice. And you just work under a different set of guidelines, and you don't have the same rights that you have. So understanding that rules are important and they're for a reason, so follow the rules, that serves you well, especially if you're going in the military.